as I've learned from one of the recommendations of the Age of Acrimony, as I feel embarrassed that I didn't know that senators used to not be elected.
What a crazy system, huh?
Yeah, I mean, many of the things we take for granted now as defining our democracy was kind of invented, developed after the Civil War, in the sort of 50 years after the Civil War.
Absolutely correct. Age of Acrimony, oh my God. I love that book. I cannot recommend it enough. It is so important. And one of the biggest mistakes that Americans make is that we study periods where greatness happened, but we don't often study periods where nothing happened or where really bad shit happened. We don't spend nearly enough. Americans know about FDR. They don't really know anything about the Depression or how we got there. What was it like to be alive in the United States in 1840, right? Nobody thinks about that, really, because it's kind of an in-between time in history. There are people who lived their entire lives, who were born, who had to live through those times, who were just as conscientious and intelligent as you and I are, and we're just trying to figure shit out, and things felt really big. So the Age of Acrimony is a time where it's just almost completely ignored outside of the Gilded Age aspect. But like you just said, it was a time where progressive reform of government and of the tension between civil rights, extraordinary wealth, and democracy, and really the reining in of big business, so many of our foundations happened exactly in that time. And I take a lot of comfort from that book because one of the things I learned from the book is that voter participation is highest when people are pissed off, not when they're happy. And that's such a counterintuitive thing. But voter participation goes down when the system is working. So 2020, right? I think we can all agree was a very tense election. That's also why it had the highest voter participation ever. 2024, very high rates of participation. Same thing. People are pissed off, and that's actually what drives them to the vote. But something that I take comfort in that is that people being pissed off and people going out to vote, it actually does have major impact on the system, because otherwise the status quo is basically allowed to continue. And so, yeah, like you just said, I mean, direct election of senators there are probably people alive today who were born when there was no direct election of senators, which is an insane thing to think about. I mean, there'd be almost 100 or so. But the point is that at that time, it was so deeply corrupt. And it was one where the quasi-aristocracy from the early days leading into the Gilded Age were able to enforce their will upon the people. But you can take comfort in that was one of those areas where Americans were so fed up with it, they changed the Constitution and actually forced the aristocrats in power to give their own power. Yeah. It's like our version of when they flipped power and took away the legislative power of the House of Lords in the UK. I just think that's amazing. And it's such a cool thing about our country and the UK too.
It's the continued battle between the people and the elite, right? And we should mention not just the direct election of senators, but the election of candidates for a party.
Yes.
That was also invented. It used to be that the quote-unquote party bosses, I say that with a half a chuckle, chose the candidate.
Yeah. The whole system is nuts. The way that we currently experience politics is such a modern invention.
With a little asterisk with Kamala Harris, but
right, yeah, good point. Well, that was actually more of a mean reversion, right? Yeah. We're living in an extraordinarily new era where we actually have more input than ever on who our candidates are. It used to be. This is crazy. So the conventions have always taken place 2 months before, right? Imagine a world where you did not know who the nominee was going to be before that convention. And the nominee literally was decided at that convention by those party bosses. Even crazier, there used to be a standard in American politics where presidents did not directly campaign. They, in fact, did not even comment about the news or mention their opponents' names. They would give speeches from their doorstep, but it was unseemly for them to engage in direct politics.
You would not get a Bernie Sanders.
No.
You would not get a Donald Trump.
Obama, Bill Clinton. I mean, basically every president from John F. Kennedy onwards has been a product of the new system. Every president prior to that has been much more of the older system. There was a in-between period post-FDR where things were really changing, but the primary system itself had its first true big win under John F. Kennedy.
I think that the lesson from that is there's a collective wisdom to the people, right?
I think so.
I think it works.
Yeah. I mean, well, okay, I'll steel man it. We had some great presidents in the party boss era. FDR was a great president. FDR was the master of coalitional politics, of his ability. In fact, what really made him a genius was his ability to get this overthrow the support of a lot of the corruption and the elite Democrats to take control at the convention, and then combine his personal popularity to fuse all systems of power, where he had the elites basically under his boot because he was the king, and he used his popular power and his support from the people to be able to enforce things up and down. I mean, even in the party boss era, we would have a lot of the people we revere really came out of that. People like Abraham Lincoln. I mean, I don't think Abraham Lincoln would have won a party primary in 1860. There's no chance. He won. He won. Luck, thank God. From an insane process in the 1860 Republican convention. People should go read about that because that was wild. I think we were this close to not having Lincoln as president. And yeah, I mean, Teddy Roosevelt, there's so many that I could point to who made great impacts on history. So the system does find a way to still produce good stuff.